Nukeproof has always been the brand of choice for privateer enduro racers, but the decision about which bike to ride just got a lot harder. So not only did Nukeproof bring out a new Mega, they've introduced a completely new bike, the Giga. So today we're going to take a closer look at these two new models and try and work out who each bike is for. So Al, what we got in front of us?
So this bike is the Mega 290 Carbon Factory Edition, and it's got 170mm on the front, 160 on the rear. This one over here is the same build, so it's a Giga 290 Carbon Factory build, and it's got 170 on the front and 170 on the rear.
So they're super similar bikes then, aren't they?
Yeah, they're really similar. Like, take a closer look. Both bikes have got full carbon frames. And both bikes, well, actually there's a slight difference in price. There's a £100 difference. The Giga is $5,499.99 and the Mega is $5,399.99. And there's so much choice. There's 3 levels of build kit. So obviously we're looking at the factory spec here, but you have 2 other models, the top end RS and the entry level comp. And you've got 29-inch wheels or 27 5-inch wheels across the board.
And you've got an alloy frame as well, haven't you?
Yep, there are alloy options on the Mega, but the Giga is only available in a full carbon frame.
So today we're just going to look at which model really you should be looking at for the type of riding that you want to be doing.
Yeah, it's definitely not like, we're not going to go into the details on each of the Gigas and each of the Megas. We're just going to look at the 2 bikes, factory Giga versus factory Mega.
Cool, so we've got 2 carbon bikes, basically the same build kit. What are the kind of weights on these 2?
They're almost identical.
Right.
Depending on the scales, there's like 60 or 70 gram weight difference between the 2 bikes. They're both in the 15.5 kilo mark. What's interesting though is, so the Mega frame is actually 100 grams lighter than the Giga, but the Giga has 100 grams lighter swing arm and a 200 grams heavier front end. So you could kind of argue that while the Mega's got a slightly lighter frame, the weight distribution on the Giga is better, so it's got more weight on the frame, less weight on the swing arm, so you'd have a better sprung to unsprung mass ratio. But like as you and I both know, you stick a water bottle on your bike, weighs about 600, 700 grams, you don't notice any difference in the suspension at all. So like we kind of park that for now, and then let me take a closer look at the numbers.
Okay, so yeah, they look pretty similar geo-wise here when they're just leaning up, but are they on the paper?
Well, actually on the paper, because I can't remember all the numbers off the top of my head. So the Giga has a 62.7 degree head angle and the Mega has a 63.8 degree head angle. So there's almost 1 full degree difference in the head angles on these bikes. But when you look at the rest of the numbers, they're within millimeters of each other. The Mega has a slightly lower BB, like 2 mil, but it's also got less travel. So like the dynamic BB heights are pretty close. The chainstay length is 3 mil longer on the Giga, so there's a slight difference in weight distribution, but then also it's got a longer front end thanks to that slacker head angle. So you could argue that actually everything starts to even out. Even the reach measurements are really similar. They're within this one, the Giga is 470, and the Mega I measured at 468. So again, 2 mil difference. One thing about the Mega though, it has a higher head tube, a taller head tube. So if we actually equate for stack height, basically the Mega would be slightly longer than the Giga, but again, we're talking 2 or 3 millimeters.
Okay, and these are all numbers that you've measured, not just pulled off
these are my
charts.
numbers, not Nukeproof's numbers. And in fact, if we're talking about stuff that we measured, I actually measured the travel on both these bikes too. The Giga delivers 170 on the money on the rear, and the Mega actually over-delivers. I measured that at 162 mil of travel on the rear when the claim travel is 160, which is great because most brands don't over-deliver.
So that actually brings them even closer.
They're really bloody close.
So we're not actually making this decision any easier now, are we? So
no, we're not. But like, and the thing is, there's going to be a lot more details. If you actually go to the feature on the website, there's a lot more details on all the geometry, all the leverage curves, everything. You can really dive deep on it. But just for the purpose of the video, we're trying to establish that that the bikes are actually quite similar. But there is a big difference between the 2 bikes, and like the real obvious one is the suspension layout. The Mega is a classic 4-bar, and it's actually got counter-rotating links. So if you look at the chainstays, they rotate anti-clockwise from our perspective on this side, and the upper link goes clockwise. The Giga is a single pivot with a linkage actuated shock. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why that swing arm weight is lighter on the Giga because it's just this one molded piece of carbon, whereas on the Mega you've got like multiple two pieces, you've got more pivots, more bearings. It all adds up in terms of weight.
Yeah. So two different suspension layouts, like completely different, but actually they fit the Nukeproof range, don't they?
Yeah, they do. So the suspension layout on the Mega takes a lot of the cues from the Reactor trail bike. Same layout, same sort of style. Whereas the Giga has definitely got like more in keeping with a more evolved version of the Descent downhill bike. So it's kind of cool that one's kind of like a shrunk down downhill bike and one's like a pumped up trail bike, and they kind of both meet in the middle.
Yeah. Like you said, we've got the factory specs here. We've got Float X2 shocks.
Yeah.
Are they exactly the same?
No, they're not. And they're different in a couple of ways. The Mega uses a 230 eye-to-eye shock, so it's a bigger shock. It's also got a longer stroke. It's a 62.5 mil stroke on that bike. So the Giga shock is 205 by 60 mil. So 205 mil eye-to-eye length, 60 mil stroke. So the leverage ratio is lower, the overall leverage ratio is lower on the Mega than it is on the Giga. So that's why the Mega has a slightly lighter compression tune.
Okay.
So it's got L1 tune, whereas the Giga has got the L tune. So still light, but the Mega is lighter.
Okay. So with more travel, but a shorter stroke, that shock is having to work a little bit harder.
It is going to work a little bit harder, yeah, totally. But like on the runs we did at BikePark Wales and stuff, it's not like, I didn't notice any fade and stuff. Maybe over a 12-minute track or something, that might be a problem. But like the X2 shock's a great shock.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of oil, it's big. I can't see it being an issue.
Yeah. Okay. And that kind of figures with a bike that's derived from a downhill bike where runs are about 3 to 4 minutes.
Exactly.
Whereas this is a Duro model that's a lot longer trails. So did we run the kind of similar settings on these, or were they quite different?
Yeah, well, we started off actually with the forks, because it's the same fork on both bikes. And we started off with the forks with the exact same settings. But quickly after like 1 or 2 runs, I increased the air pressure in the Mega, and we decreased the air pressure in the Giga. And that probably is to do with maybe the weight distribution of the bike, and also that slacker head angle just affects like how the fork behaves. Shock settings were like stock recommended settings from Nukeproof, and which felt really good. And instantly, when you get on both bikes, like the riding position feels quite similar, so it's like super easy to get on with. But even pedaling across the flat section at the top of BikePark Wales, there was an obvious difference between the ride quality of the two bikes.
Yeah, so the Mega had a kind of much more immediate sort of response when you're pedaling, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But there was also more of a softness. It seemed to trace the ground slightly better.
It did. It definitely traced better, and it kind of encouraged you to sprint a little bit more. So I think it has that kind of enduro bike kind of nature to it. But like you said, there was a softness to the suspension. We commented on the fact that it felt like the tire was like 2 or 3 PSI softer on the Mega, but like they weren't. They were all equalized, and it's got the same tires, same tire pressure, same rim widths, everything. And you really noticed that on those kind of flatter sections of trail where it was a bit choppy, like the Mega just seemed to like be able to, it's the way you could pump it and the way that it kind of didn't get slowed down on the square edge hits. It just kind of seemed to maintain speed, and it was a more comfortable ride.
Yeah, it was a kind of glide-like sensation to it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When we took it across the whole length of the trail that we were testing on, that's when it really sort of manifested itself in terms of using less energy, taking less energy away from you, didn't it?
I think it takes less energy away in that respect, but it's not as stable as the Giga. So I think what happens with the Mega is that it's better at absorbing like the high frequency vibration, whereas the Giga rides so stable that you don't have to work to manage the low frequency changes on the bike, like the big variations. So you kind of ride them different. You kind of move around a little bit more on the Mega, and like it's doing the suspensions like super pitter patter. The Giga, you're a bit more planted, you're a bit more squared on it, and then the suspensions like hasn't got the pitter patter feel, but the bike feels super stable.
Yeah.
I mean, and that really noticeable on like the big berms, the jumps, even the gully where we drop in on the straight line. You just kind of lean back and let it like blast through. Which one's faster? That's really hard to say. I think over 3 minutes or 4 minutes, the Giga is the faster bike.
Yeah.
Like you can ride it hard and just hold on.
Yeah.
But on a 12-minute track, like a proper like alpine enduro trail, we've got lots of routes, lots of technical stuff, not where it's not all just wide open, maybe even where it's wet and slippery. I think fatigue could play a big part of it. And I think that's where the Mega as an enduro race bike really could come into its own, where you just basically, you're managing your fatigue over such a long stage. That could actually prove faster on like in the long run.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you can either ride the Mega using less energy at the same speed, or you can use the same energy at a slightly higher speed. But the Giga had that kind of, it just goaded you into sort of pushing a bit harder, didn't it?
You feel really cocky on it. Like that's the thing about it, is that it's a really like fun bike. It's really playful in character. And also you can change the character of this bike because you've got the asymmetric main pivot. So you can change the progression from 25.5% overall to 29%. So you can make the bike like more rampy, more poppy, which is great for jumps and like big drops and stuff. Or you can run it in the low setting. You get a little bit less pedal kickback, a little bit less progression, initial progression. You'll get a smoother, plusher ride. And then you've got like the volume spacers to play with too. So you can fine tune the progression even more. I mean, obviously you can do that on the Mega too, but you can't have that massive jump in progression that you get with this bike.
And we ran that in the more progressive setting, didn't we?
We did. We had it in the more progressive setting because I'd taken the volume spacers out of the shock to see how it felt, because in the low progressive setting with the 2 volume spacers in the shock, it felt pretty good. But when I put it in the high setting, I couldn't get close to full travel. So I took those volume spacers out. And then like you can use all of the travel but still have that more progression. So I think if we'd actually had it in the low setting with the volume spacers in, they'd be even closer in terms of performance. So it's a really tough one. Like I would not want to be on the Nukeproof team right now trying to figure out which one of these 2 bikes I was going to race EWS on. That's it's a great choice to have, but it's a really difficult choice.
There's not really any wrong answers here, but but there are those subtle differences really came to the fore at BikePark Wales, didn't they? You're going to extrapolate that on across a whole season of EWS racing. Then it's a bit more significant, isn't it?
And also you got to appreciate like the team riders. They've got they'll have their own shock and suspension on here, so they've got access to all of the custom tuning that goes with it. So like they can get the bike to behave whatever way they want.
So when the Giga came out and they sent our test bike over, it was pretty much the depths of winter, and everyone was locked down. There were no bike parks open, and I remember getting it, and it was just like inches of slop everywhere. So I've got to ride a 170mm 29er around the Surrey hills, which is as smooth as a baby's bum. And I was like, well, this is going to be a total waste of time. What am I going to find out about this? It's just going to be dragging around like a huge super enduro bike. But I was completely blown away by how well it pedaled and how engaging it was to ride, even on a fairly kind of XC sort of terrain, really. It's so much pop, so lively, and it was not, I mean, I was overbiked, but it didn't make me feel overbiked. I still had a blast on it.
Yeah, you don't feel overbiked on it. I mean, that's one of the things that they've done a really good job with the seat tube angle and your position for pedaling, and like the efficiency on the bike feels like really high. So you don't feel like you're slogging around on a big sort of wallowy sofa. And it's funny because I had a completely different experience on the Mega. So when they launched that bike, they sent it for the first ride. I took it out and I was like, this bike feels harsh. It had the Michelin tires on, which I'm not crazy about. And I was like riding around, and I kind of had a bit of a, I don't know, I'd say like a pretty average ride on it. I'm thinking, no, this is nothing special. So then I thought, okay, well, I'll do a bit more digging, did a bit more setup stuff. And then I went to Forest of Dean and then rode some tracks that I know really well there from like testing enduro bikes on. And I was like, oh my God, this bike's actually really good. And like, I don't know if it was just that I was riding it in the wrong terrain, but then it was the same terrain that you rode the Giga on, or if it was just that it hadn't bedded in, because it really started to come to life. And then, and contrast that when we rode at BikePark Wales like last week, that bike's plush. It's smooth. We talked about it's good, really good ironing out the high frequency. It's got a real smooth ride to it. There's loads of grip. So it kind of like, I had a completely opposite experience from my first experience on the bike. But to choose one, that's such a hard decision. I mean, we're lucky we've got both of them here. For now, but
I mean, on the trails of BikePark Wales, as we descended down and we got into the more flowy, jumpy stuff, the Giga definitely seemed to pull away.
Yeah, it's a faster bike. If you were on the Giga, it was kind of really easy to sit behind whoever was on the Mega. And then it was the other way around. You had to work so hard and it felt like more sketchy trying to keep up when you're on the Mega.
Yeah. So maybe if you're riding more bike parky stuff, then the Giga could be a better choice if you're not that interested in the clock or racing enduro. But
or if you're interested in the clock and you're riding in the UK and the trails are only 3 to 4 minutes long, then that could still be the bike. It just depends on really your kind of the level at which you want to race at. I think is what really makes a difference between which bike you choose. And I think we'll see in the Nukeproof team, they'll have a complete mix. Because the riders get to choose. They're not forced to ride one bike or the other, and we still don't know which bike Sam Hill's going to ride. And I think that'll be the deal breaker for most people. I think.
Right. So we can't sit on the fence for this video, can we? We've got to make a decision. We don't have to make the same decision, but
I'm not going to sit on the fence.
Okay, cool. Well, what would you go for?
Well, I'll just take the Giga.
Okay, well that's what I want as well. I guess you called it first, though.
Shall we fight for it? And not like, I mean, it's not like I don't think the Mega is a great bike. I just think for where we live and what I do, there's not many bikes like that one, where there's more bikes in that category. I think like the Gig is actually it's quite a special bike, and just to think about it in terms of its travel is kind of to get the wrong idea of it. It's actually a really versatile big travel bike.
Yeah, totally. And it's kind of counterintuitive to if you just looked at the numbers, you think, okay, more travel, it's going to be more comfortable. That's the bike I'm going to go to the Alps on. But actually, it was kind of slightly the opposite.
It was the opposite.